Welcome to Small Big Wins, a podcast that curates stories of folks who use their courage, caliber, and conviction to transform people's lives. They always look beyond personal gains and strive for the greater good. Their stories often begin with a dream as their only means. Folks who allow the soft lights of their hearts to be their guide, even when circumstances threaten to harden them. Folks who start small but win big. Hi, I'm Harshvardhan Jaju. Let's begin. I'm in conversation today with Ganesh Neelam. He joined the Tata Trusts in 2004, handling the flagship initiative named Central India Initiative, which focuses on enhancing livelihoods of tribal communities in Central India. He presently is the Executive Director of Collectives for Integrated Livelihood Initiatives, popularly also known as CInI, which is an associate organization of Tata Trusts. The Lakhpati Kisan Smart Village program, focusing on meeting the aspirations of more than 100,000 small and marginal farmers in the Central India tribal belt, is being implemented by CInI under Ganesh's stewardship under his leadership. Ganesh also leads the renewable energy theme at the Trust, and one of his key facets is the involvement in analyzing the areas of technology and innovations in the tribal ecosystem to create sustainable solutions that meet the needs of rural communities. Welcome, Ganesh, to Small Big Wins.
Thanks for inviting me, Harsh.
Thank you, Ganesh. Thank you for taking the time, which I know is very, very important for you. Ganesh, what inspired you for dedicating yourself to the social sector, to the cause of tribal communities? Where is the genesis?
So there was no, I would say, thought as such to be in this sector, Harsh. It happened by fluke, and I continue to be in the sector because I like and I enjoy what I'm doing for the last 17, 18 years now in the sector. So basically from, in terms of education, I am a geologist. So normally people do ask me, what are you doing in this sector? Because geology normally, one can go into mining or one can go into the oil field and some such related fields to look at. But again, I passed out in 2000 from the University of Pune, one of the prominent institutes focusing on geology as a subject. And when I passed out, that time the aspiration was looking at our seniors to move into the field of oil. So again, it was something which was aspiration for us because we were looking some of our seniors earning good money in that space to look at. And when this happened in 2000, there was a slag in the industry. And we basically felt, oh, what should we do now? Should we sit at home doing nothing, just study more? Or should we try and do something in this 1.5 years till the slag improves to look at? And that's the time when one of our professors, Professor Himanshu Kulkarni, a very senior hydrogeologist, he runs a very well-known organization called Lakhpati in Pune. I would say he's the foremost person to go for groundwater and community-based groundwater management in this case. So he basically encouraged us saying, rather than sitting idle, why don't you basically go and look for something which will help you develop your expertise in the space of hydrogeology. And hydrogeology mainly, as you know, it is to look at groundwater, aquifer, and see how groundwater could be basically extracted for the benefits of for the small and marginal farmers in this case. And that's how in 2000 I joined BAIF, which is India's pioneering non-profit organization. It has, I suppose, presence across the country, focusing on dairy development, horticulture, and mainly the larger community development that they do. So I learned a lot in BAIF for about 4 years of my working with BAIF and going into remote geographies of Dangs in Gujarat, or say in paid Surghana geographies of Nasik, or to that matter, Kanpur, Dehat in UP. So it was a very good experience of of understanding the community perspective, the work that they do, and what we can basically do for them in this case. So that's how basically got into this space, and then never thought of going back to the oil field and continue in the same area.
And then you happened to join Tata Trust.
So in 2004, when I worked for about 4 years in BAIF, I would say I had a good amount of understanding from the community perspective, the work that happens in the field. I got an opportunity in Tata Trust, and that's in 2004, of December of 2004 is when I joined the trust.
And the trust was running something called the Central India Initiative Program, which was carved out into a special organization, which you are heading now,
Yes.
CInI. So
Yes.
what has been the thought process of the trusts behind Central India, behind the tribal community? Why so much focus there?
Yeah, so the trust basically, because it's a very well-known grant-making organization for many years now. It's 130 years of history that we have as Tata Trust. Trust always has been focusing from a 5-year strategic plan perspective. So this has been a very focused strategic plan which the trust used to develop along with experts in the sector. So we used to get some experts on board, and they continue to do this 5-year strategic plan for us. In one of the strategic plans in 2001 and 2, when I had not joined the trust, but the strategic plan had happened that time, the focus that was asked the trust to be taken was in the poverty belt of India. And poverty belt of India, as you know, is the Central Indian tribal belt to look at.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the trust basically felt, yes, that's a very important area for it to focus. And the Central India Initiative started in 2001-2 based on the strategic plan's recommendation to the trust. So the trust, because it has always been focusing on the marginalized and the underserved and unserved communities, said it is an important area for it to focus and to make programmatic investments for seeing how the programs can benefit these small and marginal tribal communities in the Central Indian tribal belt. And because it was a geography and a focused approach, they named it as a Central India Initiative to continue the journey in that case. So that's how the initiative started, and it still continues as one of the focused areas for the trust.
But the initiative has now become a special organization.
So what happened, Harsh? So the initiative was from 2001-2. I joined in 2004, and I was fortunate enough to be part of the initiative as I joined the organization. The trust basically also felt was, apart just making grants to some good quality non-profits in the geography, can it make a very focused effort to ensure that there is a dedicated team to continue the engagement in the geography, rather than somebody going from Mumbai and monitoring the programs? Can there be a very focused and dedicated team to anchor the program from a long-term perspective? And that's where the trust felt it is important to establish a separate organization. So trust, along with some like-minded individuals, they established Collectives for Integrated Livelihood Initiatives in May 2007.
Mm-hmm.
So the core purpose of this institution has been to be like dedicated for the tribal communities in the Central Indian tribal belt. The Central India Initiative in a more focused manner, get different stakeholders to join hands to see how the tribal communities can benefit from a long-term perspective. And that's how the organization has been basically doing this core focus for the last 15 years now. Since 2007, as an organization, we have been focusing only on tribal communities and implementing some really important and scalable programs along with them.
So I think one of the most important scalable programs in this period has been the Lakhpati Kisan program.
Yes.
Which has been rolled out in all the, I think, 5 states in Central India in which you are operating,
right,
for the small marginal farmers of the tribal communities.
Yes.
So how did this program get developed? I mean, the journey to even developing a program, making it known as Lakhpati Kisan, should have had its own travails and triumphs. What were they?
So Harsh, again, CInI as an organization, as I said, initially in 2007, we were mostly like a monitoring organization. So we used to monitor the partners whom Tata Trust was making grants. So that was our role, a limited role to start with in that sense. But then our role evolved. So 2007 to 9-10, we were mostly like a monitoring organization. In 9, basically said as a team, internally as a team, we also grew. So initially we were only 3 to 4 colleagues. But in 2009-10, we were about 15-20 in CInI. And we basically said, rather than just being a monitoring entity, can we design some programs which, along with the communities, we will be able to do it and implement it at a certain level so that there are benefits that we can see on the community level. So some such programs were Kharif paddy stabilization, Kharif maize stabilization. So as you know, in eastern part of central India, paddy is the main crop. Similarly, in the western part of central India, the maize is the main crop. So the main crop during the monsoon season are these two crops focus. And we basically saw there are gaps in the way the families are cultivating these crops. And that's why the returns are also not appropriate for these families. The practices are traditional, and how do we basically work on improving these practices? So we initiated a program on Kharif paddy stabilization, Kharif maize stabilization, proactively to see how the yields could be improved for these small and marginal farmers. And with that yield improvement, you basically focusing on a 12-month food security. So food security was the core during that time for us to look at. So we were implementing, so 2010 to about 13-14, we were implementing the paddy and maize stabilization program. And we got some good learnings. We were able to ensure at least a 10 to 11 months food security for the families that we were working with.
Oh, so you're talking about the food security for the individual families.
Yes.
To sustain themselves.
Yes, because food security was an important challenge, Harsh, when we were looking at programs. And after the monsoon season were migrating because they did not have much at their area, and also not able to manage the food availability for the whole year for themselves. And that's why the migration, those issues were happening in that case. We could see a good output of the program, wherein the yields in paddy were double, the yields in maize were double in terms of the annual returns to the families. And we basically were happy with this whole process. And what we did was we documented the whole process, and then we approached Tata Trust, which was our main donor that time. We approached the Tata Trust and we basically presented to the Tata Trust saying we were able to basically increase the yield from basically double the yields of these small and marginal farmers. And we basically feel it is a very good outcome of the program. Now, as you know, Tata Trust trustees, all very senior, highly acclaimed individuals, Mr. Tata himself being the chairman of Tata Trust in this case. So all the trustees very nicely listened to us. They appreciated our work. But Mr. Tata, at the end of our presentation, very subtly told us, yes, this is a good program. You guys have done really good. The yields have doubled. You have been able to ensure a food security for 10 to 11 months. This is good. But I very strongly feel this is only an incremental change or improvement that you guys have been able to do. Now, we were basically stuck saying, oh, incremental, is this something which we feel is not incremental, but he feels is incremental? Very strongly told us, you guys are only looking at some incremental improvements or benefits from the tribal and smaller margin families. You are not looking at aspirational changes that these families are looking for. We were really stuck, Harsh, that time saying, oh, only incremental, not aspirational. Again, we also did not visualize as a team that aspirational means what from these small and marginal farmers' perspective. So he very politely told us, this is what I very strongly feel. You are not looking at things aspirationally. Go back, engage with the communities, and come back with a program which is really aspirational, not incremental. So we were stuck. We basically said, oh, what do we do? We were expecting a 3-year approval. Because we are a non-profit depending on grants, we were saying, oh, how do we now go ahead? So that was a big, blow, a very strong feedback for us as a team. And this happened sometimes in September 2014 to us as an organization. So then we basically as a team came back, did some introspection internally. We felt, it cannot be aspirational. What would the families want? Food security is the main issue. So that is something that we have been focusing on. Let us continue on that. Say we will increase the yield threefold, fourfold, and something like that. But then, there was a person, Vartika Jaini, who was leading CInI before me during that time, and I also contributed to this whole process in that sense. So along with the team, basically we said, no, let us look at what aspirational actually means. What are the aspirations of these small and marginal farmers, which Mr. Tata is very strongly putting across to us. We went back to the communities. We spent at least 3 to 6 months along with the communities to understand what their aspirations are. And when we were discussions with the communities in these 4 states, we basically very strongly got the feedback from the communities that they are expecting at least a monthly income of 10 to 15,000 rupees. Now, because these are depending on, say, agriculture, livestock, and those type of livelihoods, it would not be a monthly income. It would be a seasonal income. But that came up very strongly to us that 10 to 15,000 would mean about 1.2 to 1.8 lakh rupees per annum as an income to these families.
And versus what was their current income at that time?
The baseline income that time, hers was different in different geographies. Like in Odisha, it was hardly 12 to 13,000 rupees.
For the full year?
For the full year from agriculture and allied. So I'm talking about only agriculture and allied, not labor and other related aspects.
Correct.
Because we said that's the resources that the families have. And if we can actually engage with the families on addressing gaps in those resources, we can surely give a much better and a substantial income to the families in this case to look at. So with that baseline income across geographies, then we 1,000 rupees. So the states of Gujarat, Jharkhand, Odisha, and Maharashtra, we basically said the average baseline income is about 30,000 rupees. How do we take this 30,000 to 1.2 or 1.8 lakh rupees per annum? So at least a 3 to 4-fold increase in income. So that was something which came as an aspiration from the communities. We also engaged with them to understand their visualization of aspiration. So they drew a better house, my child going to school, I having, say, better agriculture, livestock. So they were able to visualize these changes within them, which we did not earlier anticipate, something which will come from the communities as such. So with that aspiration, the term Lakhpati also came from the communities during our discussions. They basically said, oh, we need this income of, say, 10 to 15,000 rupees per month. Can we basically be Lakhpatis through our work in agriculture and allied? Now that basically struck Lakhpati as a term, basically then struck to us saying, oh, this is a very important term which the families are relating themselves to. And because they are saying they should be called as Lakhpatis, it also gives a certain stature within the village, which is very important for these small and marginal farmers. You also must have seen during your visits in Gujarat. So that basically enabled us to say, okay, let us look at a 3 to 4-fold irreversible increase in income. Not only say 1 year a good income, second year going down. How do we look at that irreversibility at the family level? And that's where we designed the goal, Lakhpati Kisan, irreversible and sustainable income year on year for the small and marginal farmers in this case. So that's how the Lakhpati Kisan program came into life, Harsh. We went back with this proposition to Mr. Tata and the trustees. They appreciated, saying, oh, this is something which looks really very strong, something which is aspirational from the community perspective. Now let us maybe make those investments on seeing how the program could be taken ahead. And we got our approvals. We started this program in April 2015. So since then, we have been working with these communities to see how we can meet their aspirations of being Lakhpatis.
So since April 15, when this program started, Good.
April 15.
7 years now.
About 7 years journey now.
What has been the quantifiable impact which has been achieved?
Harsh, basically we started with more than 100,000 small and marginal farmers. So currently, if you look at the scale, we are about 110,000 households in these 4 geographies to look at. We basically saw of these 110,000 households, nearly 50,000 households are actually moved to the Lakhpati pathway. So they are already earning an income of more than 1.2 lakh rupees per annum. And we basically have a process of capturing the outcomes as well systematically on the ground. Nearly about 20,000 families, apart the 50,000 families who have crossed the Lakhpati mark, the 20,000 families have reached 80 to 90,000 rupees income. So now they are at that juncture wherein with some level of effort along with these families and the institutions which will put that effort for the families, they will move to the Lakhpati pathway. So that's basically what we have been able to see as an outcome. The second important outcome, Harsh, and that's something which we have been proactively focusing on, is the vibrant and strong community institution, the women-led institution. Because it cannot be only income. It has to have that empowerment and strength with the communities, which will help them continue this journey rather than just being for a few years. How do they continue this journey? So that has been a very strong outcome for us. Currently, we have about 25 such strong and vibrant institutions on the ground. I would say nearly 20-22 are led by women. So the board of directors are women. And they are basically now running the program with some support from our side. That has been I would say, the most important outcome. Income, I would basically put as the second outcome in this case. So this has been the most important outcomes for us as part of the Lakhpati program.
So why is this women leading the show of all these Lakhpati Kisan programs in each household? Why is it so important for you, Ganesh?
So Harsh, our learning of working with the communities, mainly the tribal communities for the last few years, has basically shown that if you are able to engage with the women in a positive and a proactive manner, the women basically can start leading the actions in a more systematic and engaging manner. And she can actually also focus and push on the changes that are required within the community, and then that also reflects within the family. So there is a leadership ability within women, which we are trying to build on. And we very strongly feel if that leadership within the women comes, then sustainability and irreversibility is something that is something which is completely possible. And that's why saying we will focus mainly on women, and through women, how do we engage the families in this case. So our learnings for the last 6 to 7 years has been very positive on that front to look at.
When I visited Dahod, to take a preliminary look at the kind of work which is happening at the hands of CInI, I visited several households, several farmers, and I could see that women are leading the show everywhere. They are the ones who are coming and talking to me. There is a group of women who have come together to, witness when I was interviewing them and talking to them. I could hardly see any men over there. Hardly see. In 1 or 2 places there were men over there, but it was primarily the women. And what I wanted to compliment you was that, when हम शहरों में देखते हैं तो इंटरनेशनल वुमेन्स डे मनाना पड़ता है, पर मैं वहां था, मुझे लगा यहाँ तो इंटरनेशनल वुमेन्स डे इज अ कंटिन्यूअस फीचर. Every day is International Women's Day over there. So I think if people go to that part of India where I have just been and they witness what I have witnessed, it would be unbelievable to see and say that this is India.
Yes.
That the involvement of women from every household in day-to-day income and earning is huge.
Yes. That's something which also keeps us on our toes, Harish, to match the power that these women have. So as a team, we also need to match on that power. We continue to do some events called Urja events. See वो power और कैसे बढ़ा है within the women, and that similarly flows back to us also as a team in this case. तो ये मतलब वो ऊर्जा देख के आपको लगता है कि यार सच में इनके साथ कुछ अगले लेवल का और करना जरूरी है, ये और ज्यादा रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी लीडरशिप ले सकते हैं उनके कम्युनिटी के प्रति. एंड मैं बोलूंगा कि दे आर नॉट बायस्ड. वो बेसिकली चाहते हैं कि ठीक है हमारा बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स अगर आप इंस्टीट्यूशंस के देखें, so they are benefiting because they have been proactively engaged. They are seeing that incomes coming to them. Most of them are actually Lakhpatis. But they also very strongly are focusing on how other members, who all are the members of these institutions, they also start getting those benefits. So ऐसा नहीं कि leaving some families, only focusing on some families, but to look at that overall up and moving towards the Lakhpati path. So that's very important. नहीं तो it basically happens in a program that you do a small portion and then you feel it is good enough. How do you basically saturate and continue that saturation is something which I see very strongly within the women.
So I'm going to read out this wonderful thing which I found, Ganesh, and this was something which was said by Lady Meherbhai Tata in the address to Battle Creek College in USA on November 29th, 1927. And this is what she said. I always say Indians can never be a great nation until their women are given the necessary training and full scope and power to do all the good they can, and would do if allowed to and given the opportunity by their men folk. There are very few men in India today who think in this way. So this is a quote which I share from this beautiful book, Good Thoughts, Good Word, Good Deeds, which is a book of Tata quotes gifted by one another Tata friend to me. So exactly this is what you have achieved through CInI and through this Lakhpati Kisan initiative. So Lady Meherbhai listening to this would be very, very happy, Ganesh.
We would request her blessings for us on a regular basis.
Of course. Ganesh, we spoke about the tangible improvement in the incomes of these families going up from 20,000 rupees on an average to 1,20,000 today. And I know that there are several families who have also crossed 2 lakh rupees for that matter. But what have been some of the intangible improvements in these families, in the people who lead these families?
So, in terms of intangible, Harsh, as I was sharing some time back, is the leadership that we could see within the women. So, again, to give an example, when the first wave hit, the COVID wave hit us, we were actually panicked on how now we will be able to connect with our women leaders, because as a team, we used to basically be there on a day-to-day basis, or at least twice or thrice in a week to look at. That time, something that triggered very strongly for us, and that's, I would say, we had never imagined us, was the leadership that these women members took to engage with all their stakeholders, including us as a team. So they were able to immediately move towards a Google Meet level approach, which we also as teams on Microsoft Teams and Zoom were trying to struggle. They moved to that space, and then they started engaging with their vendors, with the input guys, with the market players, with us as a team, and all relevant stakeholders. So they were immediately doing those dialogues and discussions. And that's where we felt that's a very important leadership thing that these women leaders as part of the institutions have shown. So that's, I would say, a very important intangible change that we could see here. The second important intangible change we could see, and that is again triggered with the income that these families have, is the money going for what purposes. So it is not, say, only a good income at my end or my family's end, but how am I using that resource or money in a right direction? So we could very clearly see women having a very strong say on saying now education for children. If I have to send my child to a boarding school or to a block level school, I will basically then invest in that. I will basically ensure that my house is improved. So looking at how my house improvement can happen. A sanitation unit. So their investments actually going into the sanitation unit, which again shows a very strong connect to the women in this case to look at. No, those were very strong connections which we could see from the increase in income at the family level. And then we very strongly believe it was a family decision. Again, women played an important role, but a family decision to see how the income goes into a right direction. So that is again an important, I would say, outcome that we could visualize first. So again, similarly, a few more and many more such intangible outcomes we could see at the community level.
So I know, Ganesh, that you have a very strong team of people who help you with this whole initiative in different states. And all of you have done this remarkable work at the very, very deepest level of grassroots in India. What are some of the incidences you remember which have left an indelible impact on you, or which have made you understand or interpret a value in a certain way which you would have otherwise not thought?
So again, Harsh, I will emphasize more from our team level as well as the community level in this case. So at the team level, Harsh, as I was sharing, I'm highly fortunate to have a strong team, because unless and until you have a strong team delivering such a focused program in defined timelines is very difficult. And there's a team who imbibe all the aspects and not look at it as a regular project, look at it as a mission. And that's why we also called it as Mission 2020 program in this case. Mm-hmm. So that way the team basically continued on that journey for the last 6 to 7 years to look at. There were incidences of, say, things going down, things going up, and those type of things which normally happen in such programs as well to look at. But something that basically I felt and organizationally also we at CInI felt was the risk-taking ability within the team. And I never, I would say, visualized that we will be able to hold that risk and continue with that risks to see how we can address them in a very focused manner. Now, just to give an example, Harsh, something that we as a team, when we were implementing the Lakhpati program, some of us very strongly said we need to integrate technology within the program. And as you know, if one has to say integrate technology, there are always n number of questions on how it would not work, rather than saying it will work and we should basically test it out. Now, this was again the same thing that happened within our team, saying, oh no, it is not something that will work. Small and marginal farmers will not be able to take it. The cost is high, and n number of, say, no's to say why it cannot be done in this case. But then what happened was we basically saw a spark within the community on saying, oh, this is a good technology for them to adopt. And we could also see there are some owners within the team who were able to take it proactively in a systematic manner. So the technology, it's piloting, then capturing the learnings, and then scaling it up in a systematic manner. So that internally within CInI, I would say, changed a lot, saying that no, CInI is not a regular non-profit organization which only focuses on things which are easy to do. But we are also an organization who's ready to take risk at the next level and see what has to be done to achieve that particular outcome. So we as a team were very clear, Harsh, that the goal is there. The Lakhpati Kisan goal is there. Now to reach that goal, you can have n number of pathways, and we will take whatever pathway is helping us reach that goal of Lakhpati, rather than saying, no, this will not happen, that would not happen. So that was something which I very strongly felt as a team, initially a few of us, but then later on, I would say nearly 90 to 100% of our team members moved towards that pathway of taking risk, bringing in technologies and seeing how that could be taken ahead. A link point to this from a community perspective was the myth that we had, communities would move slowly, it will take time, they will adopt certain things in a slower manner and then see how the program would move ahead. So you cannot do this in a defined 5 to 6 years period. So that was a myth that most of us had. We said we have agreed to a goal statement of Lakhpati, but can we do it in 6 years? So that was also a strong, challenge that we had as a team. But from a community perspective, we were able to see that that myth is really something which is not there. It is only in our heads. From a community perspective, they are seeing how they can proactively work on these things, adopt these new technologies, get that relevant support from us as an organization, and move ahead. So that myth of saying communities cannot adopt new technologies, communities will not contribute substantially from their side to own the implementation, were again something I would say have been very strong value systems for us as an organization. We now very strongly know, yes, from the community perspective, there is something that they are seeing as a benefit, and the adoption will move smoothly. There would not be any issue. So I would basically give this as example, Harsh, to the point that you mentioned.
When we talk about the House of Tatas, we are very intrigued by their philosophy, by the way they work. And we are always very inspired by Mr. Ratan Tata himself. So are there any more incidences which you can recall, which you would like to share on this forum?
I was not, but I am highly fortunate to interact with Mr. Tata, I would say nearly 9 to 10 times till now, and also one-to-one with him in some cases. So we always only had opportunities of presenting our programs to him in the board meetings. But once during the Founders Day, March 3rd, we were able to actually interact with him along with the community leaders in Jamshedpur. So when he was in Jamshedpur on the Founders Day, we ensured that we get some of our women leaders, some of our team members in Jamshedpur, and showcase to him the work of Lakhpati Kisan program as well as our education work in this case. So he, when he was visiting the Tata Steel work, he spent at least half an hour with us, not with us, mainly with the women leaders, to understand from their perspective on how the program was, how are they implementing, what are the benefits. So, and I would say a very soft-spoken person, very, very soft-spoken person, and listens a lot. I would have never imagined a leader who listens so much and then basically responds. Because normally there is a tendency that if somebody is speaking, you'll stop the individual in between and start commenting, which is not the case here. He listens to you completely and then basically will start giving his feedback inputs. You normally feel he may not know certain things in development, but that's not the case here. He knows everything. And then he will subtly put a point which you never have imagined. This could also come as a question. We used to do dry runs before going and presenting to him. And we used to envisage, yes, this question will come, and what would be the response. But whatever we used to do in the dry run, there would be a third question which used to come, which we never imagined in most of the cases. And we used to then try and respond to him in this case. He listens quite nicely. He listens very clearly to us. And he also very strongly supports the work that we as a team do in this case. So Mr. Tata or even Mr. Krishna Kumar, who's again a very prominent person in the Tata group, he once basically asked us, saying, you guys are implementing work in the field. Hope you guys are getting all the support in the field. You are not, so because you work in a Naxal area, you do not have any, say, those issues. Please let us know if there are any such issues. We should see how we can help you. So there has always been a concern towards the team from these leaders. And that also basically helps you be motivated to continue your work in this journey. So always a high motivation that we get from our trustees to continue our work. So highly fortunate to be with our trustees and Mr. Tata himself to that matter.
Ganesh, where do you see the Lakhpati Kisan program going from here? There is a certain critical mass which you have achieved with more than 50,000 families, and all others are quite close to the target. That should be done in pretty fast, I guess. So what are the next few years looking like?
So Harsh, as a team, and mainly because of the communities, I would say in the last 6 to 7 years, we have been able to prove this approach at a certain scale. So 100,000 families is not a small number that way. We have been able to prove the approach that if we work in a focused manner with the livelihood layering, with small and marginal farmers, technology, financial inclusion, stakeholders joining hands, you will surely see that movement of families going towards the Lakhpati pathway. So that's in a way proven, I would say, to look at. What we basically are now getting into our next phase is to see how we move this journey from this 100,000 families that we have been working to nearly 300,000 families. So that's the pathway that we are taking as a team. Now that will also happen from a saturation perspective. So we will basically see within the blocks, districts where we were working in a cluster form, how do we expand that with the institution. So they will play an important role on the expansion and the deep saturation that will happen. So that's one what we call journey path that we are taking us. The second journey path that we are trying to focus as a team is to see how we can help other similar organizations or even say donors in this case to replicate the approach. Now this as an approach, Harsh, can go across the country. It may have local variations here and there, but because the goal is clear. So on the second approach, Harsh, is something that we are trying to engage with some like-minded donors or even organizations like us to see how they can replicate the approach in their geographies or the support that these donors are providing to other organizations. Now, because we only as an organization cannot grow, there is a limit for our growth. We are also saying how we can replicate this approach in all other geographies. As I said, as an approach, it can go across the country. And there would be some local variations that one has to look at. But as an aspiration to be Lakhpati and this approach, because it focuses on agriculture, livestock, and water resources, it basically fits into any geography within the country from a small and marginal farmers perspective. So that's the second approach that we are taking. The third is to see how we can work closely with the government system to see that this approach basically gets into the larger government program to look at. Now, one such learning that we have is in Maharashtra, wherein the government basically has been taking the Lakhpati Kisan program with our support. Similarly, in Jharkhand, the government has been trying to work with us to see how this approach could be taken to the next level of scale. So that's basically, so these are three approaches, Harsh, for us as a team in the next 5 to 7 years to move as an organization. The core is to see how more number of small and marginal farmers could basically be impacted with a program like this.
Now, Ganesh, I think this is a very, very massive transformational work. Working with marginal farmers who have marginal land holdings, right, do not have income sources, earning 12, 15, 20,000 rupees a year, taking them to a sustainable income year on year and making it grow. So all compliments and
thanks,
appreciations to you, your team, and the entire ecosystem which works along with you. And I look forward that we are able to interact with you further on the subject in the time to come.
Yes, thanks a lot, Harsh. And only a last point from my side, Harsh, is we basically look at guidance from people like you who can basically continue to help and guide us in this journey. Because we as an organization very clearly know, Harsh, it cannot be only CInI as an organization. It needs, say, experts like you or people like you, or also other organizations who can actually work with us in this journey. So we hope to get that guidance from you on a regular basis.
Those are very big words, Ganesh. Thank you very much for those words, and always available. Always.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Thank you.